What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So thanks to everyone who went over to our Mixer page, which is linked down in the description. You can go check that out if you wanted to. We actually got over 300 followers fairly quickly, and we're looking to stream the Spawncast for this weekend. That's Saturday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time, over there, as well as YouTube. Just kind of dual stream it and see how that goes there and see how it looks and sounds, because Mixer seems to be, I don't know, coming out of nowhere now. So we figure might as well see what it's all about and see how it goes. Now today we have some interesting stuff to go over, because despite the Switch Lite and now we have the Switch Revision, the Wall Street Journal appears to have posted a new report about some sort of feature that the Switch could be getting, but in like another Switch, because, well, I took a look at the revision I got, and I'm going to talk to you a bit about that one. And we also have to talk a bit about this whole gambling thing going on. I call it gambling loot boxes going on, as it looks like Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, well, they're kind of throwing the gauntlet down, and they're going to make some of these publishers apparently disclose odds, which is something they don't want to have to do. We're going to talk about all of that and more today. As always, guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit the like button. It does help out, and get subscribed so you can stay up to date on all the gaming news that goes on pretty much every day. We do this every weekday morning, though, 8 a.m. Eastern time. And we're going to start today with Death Stranding. Now, Death Stranding comes out November 8th. I'm looking forward to finding out what the game's about, I guess, on release day. We have somewhat of an idea from some of the trailers, but it's typical Kojima fashion, who kind of keeps us in the dark. Somewhat. He tells us what we need to know, I guess, and then hopefully there's some crazy twist that we find out that's not the twist where he played as Raiden instead of Snake in Metal Gear Solid 2. Anyway, interestingly enough, Sony has removed Death Stranding from their PlayStation exclusives page, where usually they'll have all types of games, even games that aren't out yet, just kind of listed there as only PlayStation games, which has caused a lot of speculation. Specifically, the one thing that's been going around is Death Stranding gonna be a PC game as well? As Sony has been kind of lax on some of that, depending if the like we saw like Detroit and Become Human and some of those go over, although I don't think that was like a straight up exclusivity deal with Sony anyway. And it's gonna come down to if Kojima is actually allowed to do that. There's also the possibility that this could be a cross-generation game going to PS5 as well, and maybe they're like, oh, it's not a PS4 exclusive. However, that argument's weird because the page is just for Sony, seemingly. Sony PlayStation exclusive games, and it's an odd thing to see because the Decima engine is, well, it's Sony's, you know, like they're using it on their games. It'd be weird to see that go to PC. We'll see if there's anything kind of updated from this. Maybe it gets added back because it was there and then it was removed. That's the weird part. Also, if you saw Judgment and you were interested in it because, well, Yakuza's always looked interesting, but you didn't really want to jump in the middle of the story or anything. You want to try something, you know, brand new. Well, you can actually try a demo now. That's right. There is a prologue demo that has released on the PlayStation 4. You can just go download it. And the idea here, according to the description and what's been said about it, is it's supposed to give you kind of like a lay of the land, essentially. Tell you all the different things that are going on and what you can do in the game, and just give you a nice little taste of it. And you know what? I think this should have come out like a week before it released in the US, or on the same day. It is odd, I think, at times to put these demos out like weeks or even months at times after games release. It's almost like you missed that window of hype where everyone was looking at it and deciding if they wanted to buy it. And now we're again going into the end of August, right? Where a lot of games are coming out going into September, October, and then we get into the holiday rush. So I feel like they could have done this demo earlier, but if you keep looking at it and you're curious, you can go download it. And I believe at this time, the game is like a third off. It's like 30% off. So there you go. I guess if you like the demo, you can buy in at a cheaper price. Speaking of games coming out, at the end of this month, Control will be out. And in a Q&A that took place with IGN and developers, they talked about how long this game was going to be, and generally Remedy games aren't like terribly long or anything, but Control is going to be 10 to 15 hours according to them, 20 hours if you want to do everything, or if you play back through it and you kind of already know what to do, it'll take less than that. And that kind of sparked the question, do games need to actually be longer than that like all the time? Can you get away with like a 10-hour game? And I think you can. I know some people will look at that and say it's $60, I want way more time out of it. But sometimes I play a game and I feel like it's dragging on too long, and to be honest, looking at Control, I don't know if they can get 30 hours, right, of a story out of that. Most games aren't even that long. unless it's a big open world style game. If it's a linear game, generally 10 to 15 hours is about what you get. And if the story is good, if the gameplay is fun, and I feel like I could even play through it a few more times, you know what, I'm okay with 10 to 15 hours with a single playthrough, but Control, well, we're gonna have to see how that one goes, and that's out at the end of the month, so we'll find out. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get in the bigger stuff. Let's start with this interesting report from the Wall Street Journal that has now been made public. I feel like Takashi Machizuki has been writing this for a little while now, as he would make these little comments on Twitter here and there about the Switch revision and the Switch Lite. Well, here he comes now with this new report saying that Sharp is going to be providing screens that are different from the current screen in the Switch for some other model coming up. Now, there's a lot of speculation around which models it would be used for. Would it be used for the Switch Lite? Is it already in use for the Switch V2 has been dubbed by retailers? Well, I can tell you that it's not being used in the revision. For example, here's a picture because, yeah, go figure, right? I did pull the screen out after I started seeing these reports, and it's from InnoLux. I believe that's how you say it, InnoLux. And that's a screen that's already been used before after they switched to that from, I believe, JDI. So it's not a new screen, it's basically what we've been using, and it does look, I think, a little warmer, maybe a tad brighter than what I was using before with my old Switch, but the screens that Sharp will apparently be supplying is named IGZO or IGZO, and those are interesting because those would be considered, I guess, more high-end screen technology. Like, it's being used in, just as examples, like 8K television. It's being used in more expensive phones. I believe the Razer phone actually uses that type of screen technology. And this is something that apparently, again, according to the Wall Street Journal, is being provided to Nintendo, who's failed to comment on the story, with the Wall Street Journal reaching out to them for some sort of Switch system. It's not being used in the V2. I really doubt it's being used in the $200 Switch Lite. That would actually shock me, but I mean, you know what, at this point, I'll pull that screen out. We'll see. Now, why would they switch to these IGZO screens? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, and I think this is the reason it threw a lot of some places off about it possibly being used now. It's more power efficient, so it doesn't pull as much energy, and here we have what appears to be a very similar Switch all of a sudden getting 40% better when it comes to battery life, so I can see why we look at that and go, oh man, this could already have it. Not quite yet. Could the Switch Lite? Again, I don't think so at that $200 price point, but we'll find out. Now, outside of just the power consumption benefits, it also can be more pixel dense, so they could go up to, they could do something like a 1080p screen or something there. It can also become brighter while, again, using less power. So this all sounds great, but if they're not going to use it in the Switch Lite, they're not using it in the current Switch, what would they use it in? And here's where things get much more into speculation territory, we'll say that. Now, of course, I know the Wall Street Journal, Nikkei have all talked about things like a Switch Pro, an enhanced model. I'm still not sure about that one. I was pretty confident about the Switch Lite, and look, there's the Switch Lite coming out next month. Everything about that made sense. Cheaper price, they want to get closer to that 3DS price point so they can sell more because their strategy is a larger install base versus the PS5 and the next Xbox next generation, which will be starting over. I get that. But a Switch Pro possibly coming out, coming up to when we might even start talking about the next generation Switch systems after, 4 years or so of the system being on the market. The question now is, would Nintendo possibly be getting those screens for prototyping for the next generation, or is this actually for a Switch revision, which would probably just build on the GPU side, and the CPU side would just stay the same anyway in the Tegra? They didn't really do a lot to the current Tegra outside of make it more efficient from what we've seen so far. So I have my doubts about a very powerful Switch Pro. So I'm kind of looking at these screens and thinking it might be a ways off, despite Machizuki saying this started up in March. So confusing stuff there, yes. And I guess we'll see if there's any more updates on the story as we go along. Next up, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts. I wanted to specifically look at these because we talked about how the second week of Fire Emblem was going to be fairly important for that series in Japan. That'll give us an idea. And, well, let's just take a look at the top 10 as you're seeing here, because you're seeing that right. Super Mario Maker 2 took back the top spot. It's not Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem had a hefty drop, but 36,486 for Mario Maker 2. Fire Emblem dropped 75% down to 35,804. Below that, we have Fishing Spirits, and then under that, we have Professional Baseball Spirits, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Olympic Games Tokyo, Minecraft, Omega Labyrinth, and then we have Power Pro Baseball. Moving over to the hardware side, we have the Switch at the top, 36,613. That is down, most likely because those revisions are slowly starting to work in, and people might be kind of holding off to get those, which I can understand that. Same price, better battery life, why wouldn't you just wait, an extra week or two to get those? The PS4, 10,054 units there. The 3DS, 2,610. The Vita, 115. The Xbox One at 48. And I look at this and I say, okay, this is kind of a boring week, right? I mean, Fire Emblem having that massive drop is very interesting because it looks like that series is becoming more popular in the West as opposed to in Japan, which is, it's weird. It is. I mean, that's good that Fire Emblem's been able to latch on into the Western audience, and what seems to be in Europe, like on the UK sales charts, it topped it 2 weeks in a row so far, and that's pretty good. FIFA will generally knock off different games, even if they're kind of new or even crash. So I'm not really sure what number Nintendo's going to turn in for Fire Emblem. I don't think it's going to be as massive as some were hoping, but I think it's going to do pretty well for the series, and I think this could end up being one of Nintendo's evergreen titles, as they like to call them, going forward. Sure, it doesn't have, like Link on the front or Mario on the front, but I still think just Fire Emblem in general will continue to grow, and by the end of this generation, we'll have a pretty good number, I would say, right next to it. Next up, let's talk about the ESA. Again, I know, we talked about them before, leaking a bunch of information of journalists, media, YouTubers, influencers, and everything. But this time, let's talk about loot boxes, the ESA, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, and what'll end up probably being EA, Activision, anyone else who wants to use loot boxes, as it appears that the big three are going to have some parameters around using loot boxes on their platform. Specifically, you need to start disclosing odds. So let's say you buy a FIFA Ultimate Pack. What are the odds of getting the ultra rare, the rare, the commons? What chances do I have? And trust me, these companies don't want to tell you that, because you might look at that and say, well, that's 1% chance. Why would I buy that? Or it's a 2% chance. And that's kind of the idea is, look, if you're old enough to buy into these things, you understand the risks right away, and then you're looking at those odds that are right in front of you. The question is how in front of you is it going to be? Is it going to be hidden off to the side? Is it going to be in like some sort of, what are those, like the disclosure, privacy disclosure form things you got to read through, the EULAs and everything? Is it going to be in something like that? Or is it literally going to be right next to it when you go to buy gems or FIFA bucks, or, well, just using your credit card and then you go to open it? That's the question. But this is going to apply to any new games or any games that get updates. That's right. If a game goes back, updates, and adds loot boxes, they still need to have the odds attached to them. So if you decide to get kind of sneaky there with your loot boxes, or I guess a cash shop that then leads to loot boxes, well, guess what? You still got to bring the odds with you. This won't affect anything that's current right now. It's just, as games come out, we'll see how EA deals with this in the next FIFA game, right? I'm going to be curious about that one to see how all of that goes down, because EA has been at the forefront of fighting for loot boxes, and now the biggest platforms that they released their big money makers on are telling them you gotta put the odds that you don't want to put out there, you gotta put them right there. And we have governments and stuff looking into this and leaning on them more and more. This seems to be something they're just trying to do to get ahead of it and just say, hey, we told them, put the odds out there. But still, you have what are games of chance, essentially, attached to money and virtual items. So we'll see. I don't think this is good enough for the government to stop looking into it, but I do think it's a good first step, and it will force EA's hand to start telling us how bad, or how bad our chances are to get some of these cards or these characters or whatever in FIFA Ultimate. And our last bit of news is talk about Pokemon Sword and Shield, because we did get like a 2-minute trailer. I think Japan actually got like a 4-minute trailer, so there was some extra information in there. One was pretty cool, but we're gonna go over some of it because we had new evolutions, we had a new group that was shown, some new characters. The one that was really funny is this Weezing evolution. You're seeing some of the footage, but the Weezing evolution is absolutely absolutely hilarious looking. I think they gave him a mustache and like a top hat that's supposed to be like a chimney. Sure, I guess. Zigzagoon also got a Galar region evolution, and we also had what I thought was kind of neat is a kind of a new system set up called Pokejobs, where they are missions that you will send your Pokemon on from your boxes. Now, it looked like we had something like this in Pokemon Sun and Moon, but this reminds me very much so of job systems you would have where you would send different characters that you're not using in something like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 as an example. You would send blades away to do jobs, there would be a timer set up, and then they would come back with experience, rare items, any of that stuff. Another great example, an older game, Final Fantasy Tactics, did something very similar. So I like the idea of Pokejobs where you give Pokemon that you're not really using something to do, and then most likely a counter or timer will count down, right? And then they'll come back with some cool stuff. They say you can get experience for that Pokemon and rare items, and you'll probably end up completing quests alongside of it as well. They also introduced Team Yell, which looks to be like a secondary group, kind of like a Team Rocket almost, or something that's gonna I guess bug you and work against you while you're playing through it. So far they've at least been adding some more information. Still a lot of questions as to how many Pokemon are going to be in the game, but I guess we still have until November till it releases, and honestly, they might not even want to touch that subject. They might just wait. And we'll finish up the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This one is from Batman Beyond Reason, says, wait, what if Gamescom is where Sony will show the PS5? Okay, maybe it won't, but still, I think Sony is going to have their own conference at the end of this year. This is just me speculating again. November, December, the PlayStation Experience. And that's where they will finally show off some pieces of the PlayStation 5, and then most likely they'll have their big media tour next year with, I'm sure, E3. They'll probably go there anyway. And then they'll probably be at different PAX events, places you can go and play the PlayStation 5 leading up to what is ultimately a November release next to the Xbox Scarlet and Halo Infinite. But yes, that's most likely what will happen. I don't think it will be at Gamescom. I think Gamescom's going to be at just games. I don't think we'll see much in the way of hardware, unless like maybe Elgato or some companies like those with accessories go and show some new stuff off. But yeah, PS5, Xbox Scarlet is probably going to be most of what we talk about next year, with them showing it off at most events. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is this new Switch technology for the screen that they're going to apparently use from Sharp. Do you think that's something that is in the Switch Lite, or do you think that's something that will be saved for a Switch Pro or the next generation Switch years down the line, and we're just hearing about some stuff they're using for prototypes? Let me know where you kind of fall on that one, because I think there's still a lot we need to learn about all of that. What do you think about Pokemon Sword and Shield? And then what do you think about the gambling, kind of the clashing that's going on right now? And now we have companies with Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony showing up and saying, hey, the loot boxes need to have the odds displayed. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.